one of a 2-day seminar, and this has everything to do with stem cell research, transplants, bone marrow transplants, and we're talking to all kinds of folks, survivors, patients, moms, dads, doctors, people that help out patients with all kinds of care, all kinds of treatments. And Carrie Ugent is not only a survivor and a transplant survivor, but while you were in the hospital, I read up on you because I'm a big fan of Shark Tank.
Oh, yes.
And where you invented this new device, this new pole, because you were a patient.
Correct.
And you just got mad and said, I can make something better. Tell everybody your story.
Exactly. So I had a stem cell transplant in 2003, and I had my brother's cells. And you're stuck in the hospital for me, it was a couple of months. And that IV pole I was hooked to just drove me crazy. And it was tipping and I was tripping over it. And at one point I cut my finger on a rusty screw on the IV pole. And this was a point when I had no immune system. I was neutropenic. And that could have been a very, very serious, if not potentially fatal issue. And I thought, that's it. And I love to draw. I did not go into it thinking, I'm going to invent a new IV pole. But I started doing designs of improvements. And everyone who walked in my room, all my nurses, all my doctors, I said, what do you think about this? And it was amazing because I started getting, people slapping their foreheads saying, why didn't I think of this? Or you're on to something. And I'm a journalist in my professional life. So it was very natural for me to then start essentially interviewing all of my nurses and doctors. And the horror stories that came out about the IV pole were amazing, of serious accidents and injuries, people coming into the hospital for one thing and then ending up with other problems because the IV pole fell over on them or they tripped over it. So Safe Pole came about, and I spent the next several years working with a team of engineers and industrial designers. And so there's something on here for everybody. It has a lot of safety and ergonomic features. I covered the wheels so that you're not tripping over them, so that your cords and tubes aren't getting tangled in them.
And you can't tip this over.
Well, it still is on wheels, yes.
Right, you
it
could. It
still has to be hooked and it has to be mobile, but it's weighted in the base, so it is quite stable, and we've tip tested it against all the highest end standard poles, and
Carrie, explain to everybody, when you're a patient and you get treatment, the IV is in the vein in your chest.
It can be. It can be. I mean, I had 6 lines, so
I
had 2 chests, both arms lines coming out of it.
And you were just afraid that you were going to disconnect yourself and...
That was one of the myriad of fears, when the IV pole was involved. And in fact, we have a feature for that. It's a little transport hook that will rein that pole in, because you're being transported all over for CAT scans and other things. And I was terrified that you could see the pole sort of wandering somewhere off in the distance, and I would gather all my IV tubing together and hold it close, and it was always a fight between the transporter and me. They're saying, I need slack.
Sure.
So there's a hook for that keeps the pole reined in. Put a handlebar on. There are no screws on this handlebar. Everything is extremely easy to clean. There are no crevices. It was aerospace engineers who designed this handlebar to be comfortable and safe for kids, for pediatrics. We're in a lot of pediatric centers. You can lower the handle all the way so the kids can actually push and pull the pole themselves. And that gives them a little independence. Kids can also color it. They can color the base, they can color the handlebar, and personalize it, make it their own.
And now, I go back to Shark Tank, because I love that show.
Everyone tells me I need to
But at the same time, here you are, you're a patient, you're in the hospital, you think of something that can make it easier, and this is a global, this is all over the world now. That's got to make you feel great.
Yes, it's not easy bringing a product to market
globally, right? Because you have standards.
Especially globally, But even just as a small business, it's not easy. And we launched in 2008, right at the start of the economic collapse.
Okay.
So it is definitely a challenge.
Okay.
And just having the idea is actually a small portion of the whole process.
And how do you, not only, you invented this while you were in the hospital, how are you feeling? Good?
I feel great. So
Good.
It's been 10 years for me. It's actually been 20 years since I was diagnosed.
Okay.
And 10 years since the transplant. And everything,
And you primarily do this, or are you still in journalism?
I'm still a journalist, so I write books primarily.
And the books are with what you went through, or just totally
they are
different?
Not at all.
Okay, good.
So mostly they are nonfiction books. The most recent one is called The Whistleblower.
Okay.
And I wrote the story of an amazing woman who blew the whistle on a private military contractor. There's a movie called The Whistleblower as well. That's her story. And then I've got a novel coming out next year. It will be called Madam, and it's historical fiction set in 1900 New Orleans.
We have so many people here from all ages, all over the world, watching on the internet. Here you invented this. When it was all said and done, you were diagnosed 20 years ago. It's devastating. It's like, am I going to get through this? And when it's all said and done, it's like, I always hear God gives those that are the strongest a real big challenge.
Yeah.
You were challenged. When it's all said and done, I was supposed to go through this, in a sense. Not that you were supposed to, but at the same time, you certainly have so much purpose now.
It's interesting, because I was 21 when I was diagnosed, and I don't necessarily subscribe to that view. I know a lot of people do, and maybe it was the time that I was diagnosed when you're still trying to figure out who you are, and all of my friends were figuring out they were going to go to law school or what job they were going to have, and suddenly that was all put on hold for me indefinitely, and it ended up being a long time. For me, I really resisted having this diagnosis be a part of my identity at all. I told only close family and friends, and really kept it very private. Not that I was ashamed in any way, but I did not want it associated with this person I was still discovering, with who I was. So to me, I view it as a really lousy thing that happened, but I learned a tremendous amount from it, and I sought out the opportunities that were there within that time to do things. And I remember being there, going through the transplant and not knowing if I was going to make it through. And thinking if there was just something I could do, just a little something that could make life easier for patients to come after me. And that's really how this came about, was needing to assign some meaning to this and know that there was some bit of good that was going to come from it.
Well, and two, you can tell that you're not just thinking of yourself, because you can adjust this for the little ones.
Yeah.
So this is going to be around forever now.
Well, and the other thing too is that I wanted the whole company to, as much as possible, be about giving back. So every single Safepool is 100% assembled by adults with disabilities. We work with a nonprofit outside of Chicago, and that makes me very happy.
I can imagine.
And so I've been trying to look at every single realm, and we are a woman-owned business, and make a difference where I can.
And so, what do you say to the folks that recently diagnosed?
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
Yeah, I tell them to set the clock a little forward and know that this is finite, that it will end and you'll get there. And it was so helpful for me when I was just about to go into the transplant. I met a woman who was a year out. She looked great. And I said, that's it, I'm setting the clock for a year, and this may be a really lousy year, but in a year from now I'll have my life back.
Yeah.
And I did.
And now, Carrie, we can read your novels, and how do we can get
So-
this? How do we get your
this-
novels and you and this?
And I should mention too, if for the viewers watching, if they want this in their hospitals, the nurses are the ones who they get it, and they're the ones that make the sales happen to the hospital. So
Okay.
tell your nurses, go on our website. It's www.safepole.net.
Okay.
So the word safe, S-A-F-E,
Okay.
the word pole, P-O-L-E.net.
Great.
And then also we have a whole contingent of patients and friends of patients who donate safe poles
Okay.
to their hospitals, their transplant units. So that's for Safe Pole. And then the books are on Amazon,
Okay.
and
And the Ugent, Carrie Ugent.
Ugent.
Good.
The
We'll
books are
read
under
those.
Carrie Lynn,
Yeah,
my pen name, but
Okay,
yes.
good.
But this is, you can find me either way.
Hey, and congratulations and on this, and just giving your heart and your soul to everybody that will listen and have it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. God bless you. We'll be right back.